Hello everybody, this is Sean Woolley, Managing Director of Cloud9 Spain. We're a real estate company based here in Marbella, covering the whole of the Costa del Sol. With me today, I'm delighted to have Miguel Manzanares, who's the CEO of Manzanares Abogados. I said that in Spanish there, didn't I? That was pretty good. One of the leading and largest law firms in Marbella. And the reason that I wanted to speak to Miguel today was about fairly recent changes around the short-term rental market here in the whole of Spain. I think it's a hot topic around worldwide. There's a lot of concern about saturation of Airbnbs and booking.coms and locals not being able to afford to get into the market. So it's a political issue, but it's obviously affecting some of our clients, I'm sure your clients, decision making processes and what they're buying and how they're buying here in Spain. So there's two things we need to be aware of really that seem to be working side by side. The 60-40 rule, where communities could vote to stop holiday rentals if they had a 3/5 majority, that came in a few years ago, didn't it? And then we've had recent interference from the Supreme Court, I think in response to some political measures, saying that if a community has within its laws or its statutes that you're not allowed to have your property as a business, that again they could also put a stop to holiday rentals within a community. So those two things have obviously caused a bit of panic. A lot of our clients, and I'm sure a lot of your firm's clients, they buy here predominantly as a holiday home, but also as an investment. So the times they're not using their property, they'd like to rent it out on a short-term basis with Airbnb. And for some of them, it's worked really well. And I think a lot of them now are worried, oh my goodness, how do I protect my position? How do they protect their position? What is going on and what can they do?
Well, before you buy a property, you have to really know if your community has already voted against touristic rentals. So therefore, everybody that is buying a property is going through a process of due diligence. And the due diligence, at the same time that you see that the property is legal and meets all the legal requirements, you also have to dedicate a chapter for the community. Not just about to know the bylaws regulating your community, to know of course what's going on, but also if your community has ever decided before you buy the prohibition, or it's better said limitation of touristic rental. If never's been prohibited, has never been limited at your community, my advice is that you apply your touristic license, and because if this is happening in the future, this is not retroactive, therefore you will always retain your legal position, so you're rightful to rent out your property long-term and short-term as a touristic license. So therefore, this will be like the first thing. Is the property that I am buying limited or not? If it's not limited, our advice, you gain your right as a short-term landlord, and therefore nobody in the future, if your community is meeting up to vote against it, it's not retroactive.
So they can't take that away from you once you've got it.
Exactly.
So you can carry on renting short-term, even if the community are not happy, they don't want to.
They have to respect that you are rightful to rent out your property, because this was already approved, registered and operating before the limitation was voted. So that's number one. Then number two, the quorum that you have to achieve to limit, because the word prohibition is something very strong, right? So then a community of owners is not an authority, is not a judge, is not a court to prohibit something, but to limit. That's really what the law says, is limitation, not prohibition. But anyway, if they to do something that is really limiting your rights as a citizen, which is renting out your property, then you have to achieve a very important quorum, not just something simple. And that important quorum is 3/5 of number of units and number of owners. So that's really quite important, because maybe one owner has 3/5 of the number of units, but he is one of 10 people. So therefore, he is not by himself allowed to limit everybody else, because he's just controlling 60% of the development, right? So therefore, to find that double quoting is so difficult. And then if you go to the land registry to register, to give a public domain somehow message to whoever wants to buy the property that short-term rentals is not permitted, then the land registry will have to be carefully analyzing what was the approval, how that took place, if the double quorum was correctly met, if all the neighbors were called correctly, if the minutes are written in a correct way, if the quorum was correctly approved. And in many cases, that's really so hard to happen that people are still saying, okay, we didn't achieve the quorum, we tried, and we didn't get registration with the land registry. So they say, but oh yeah, we have something there. We have the statutes of the community that was originally done when the community was first operating. This, by law, has to be approved by unanimity. And many people have been, okay, we have an statute that's been voted by unanimity, so we have more than a double quorum, the 3/5. Perfect. And the statutes are duly registered. So therefore, we have already registered. And the statutes say commercial activities cannot be run in that residential complex. So we got it. And they try to use that avenue of the statutes are prohibiting commercial activities in that community because the statutes are registered, because the statutes have been approved by unanimity, and because the statutes say that. And the Supreme Court said this is not commercial activity, it's a different kind of thing. This is really a rental income of someone using a property for like an additional income, but it's not really run as a company. It's not really run like a business activity. So therefore, this general expression of no commercial activities are permitted cannot be used like a way to do a bypass to my difficult quorum and to my difficult registration, and therefore we cannot use that way to say I am bypassing the difficulties of the law to overcome this and to get it prohibited. So the Supreme Court has been stating something like that.
Whew. It's complicated, isn't it? Because so the first thing is if in the community minutes the community has said no holiday rentals, there's nothing you can do about that. If you don't have a license, that's fait accompli.
If it says in the very first statutes by unanimity and is registered, of course, this is clear. But that this is not really done normally. What we find is the statutes are very standard, approved by unanimity, registered at the land registry, and many of them say no commercial activities are permitted in the residential complex. But this is like a hairdresser in the apartment, so this is registered. If you want to prohibit, or better say, limit the touristic rental, you have to call in a specific general meeting.
Yeah.
You have to approve by 3/5 of property owners a number of properties, number of units. And if this is the case, you go to the land registry and the land registry will say, okay, I register this limitation at this registry. So therefore, everybody that has access to the land registry will get a certificate called nota simple, and in the nota simple will show who is the owner of that apartment, what is the description of that apartment, charges, encumbrances, liens, etc. And it will be expressed there that there is a limitation. But people are not really achieving that limitation, that registration of that limitation, because the double quorum is very
It's hard to find. It's hard to get, isn't it?
It's very hard.
There's some communities at the moment, I know from personal experience, that presidents of communities are writing to the owners of properties within their community saying, we've had legal advice that holiday rentals need to stop because in our statutes it says that you're not supposed to rent your property on a commercial basis. Do they have any authority to do that?
No, they don't. They don't, because they cannot really associate by interpretation that you are running a commercial activity. A commercial activity can possibly happen sometimes, really, if in a block of apartments there are 10 or 12 apartments that a company is running those in a business equivalent of a hotel. making up the rooms, the apartments every day, replacing the minibars and cleaning. If these companies are providing those services and they're running a proper activity, charging consequently 10% VAT to customers, this is really a commercial activity. And this is something that the statutes are not permitting to be happening. Of course, in that case, if you go, then this is not permitted. But if someone is the owner of an apartment or 2 apartments and is just renting out that occasionally without providing to the customers those services equivalent to a hotel, therefore, this is not a commercial activity, but a personal income of renting out your property.
Even if it's on Airbnb and
Yeah,
Booking.com?
absolutely.
As long as it's not run as a bigger entity that's...
As long as you're not providing additional services, because it's a different thing that you are doing check-in, leave the property, then do the checkout, but you're not cleaning up every day. You're not making up the rooms every day. You're not replacing the minibars and reorganizing everything. So that is more like a hotel kind of service. Therefore, that will fall into a different type of activity. They have to charge 10% VAT and collect VAT from the customers because they provide something more than renting out an apartment. But if you are just simply renting out the apartment without providing other services, it's just your personal income as a landlord that is renting out, and that's it. So therefore, consequently, this other cannot be considered a commercial activity prohibited by the original statutes of the community.
Quick question for you. So I think we're talking mainly about apartments because that's the thing that springs to mind. What about villas? So say, I don't know, where I live, Montemayor or La Zagaleta. Could the community also have the same issue there?
They could.
Unlikely.
But it's very, very unlike, very, very unlike. But the thing is, I do not really see any strong motivation by the community owners to be able to meet together and achieve that kind of quorum to prohibit something that is not really happening at the common lobby, common elevators, common swimming pool, like very typically apartments have, right?
Is this going to cause us a problem in the market? Can you see a lot of clients being confused or worried about this? Have you seen clients sort of thinking, oh my goodness, I'll just leave it?
Well, we can see some people that have the goal of renting out property because they really are prepared to use that property for a limited number of weeks or days in the year, and they want to rent it out for the rest of the year and make an income. For those ones, it's very important. We can say even sometimes it's paramount to buy a property that doesn't have this kind of prohibition. And even for those that are not thinking today about it, my recommendation, coming back to the first question, is register yourself in the RTA, in the touristic rentals, because you gain a right, and then who knows? Maybe today is not your intention, but maybe in a few months' time you want to rent it out, and if you have gained and consolidated your right to rent out your property in short term, you have it there.
That can't be taken from you.
It will not be exactly. It's not going to be retroactive.
So I'm guessing, putting words in your mouth, I'm guessing your advice to clients who come to you about this at the moment would be check the community, make sure that they haven't voted against holiday rentals. If they haven't and it's all clear, you can go ahead and buy the property, but make sure that you register as quickly as possible for the tourism license to protect you against any future change in that situation.
Correct.
Perfect. Anything else you need to tell me about this before my head falls off? Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much.
And until next time, until we break the back of this and find out more, we'll come back to you then. Many thanks.
Thank you.